Parents put a lot of thought into the people that they trust with their kids, like babysitters, but sometimes they tend to forget about the corporations and companies that have a huge influence over their kids' experiences growing up. That's right, today we're talking about 10 concerning childhood toys, which I'm sure started out innocently enough but ended up becoming dangerous or just downright creepy. Now before we get into things, I just want to point out that these are 10 creepy kids toys that I found interesting. I'm not really sure what degree or qualifications you need to make a top 10 list, but I'm just a girl sitting in her room making a YouTube video, so if I happen to leave out one or two of your favorites, please keep that in mind before totally losing it in the comments. Thank you.
Rollerblade Barbie under your skates, quicker than flash.
First up on the list we have Rollerblade Barbie, and she sounds pretty cool. You would roll her across a flat surface and magical sparks would come out of her rollerblades. Now, I'm sure like most of you, I've heard of many different variations of the Barbie doll, but Rollerblade Barbie is not one that comes to mind. That's probably because she was recalled shortly after her release in 1991, when parents started to realize that the source of her magical sparks were a real flint attached to the bottom of the rollerblade. That's right, the same mechanism that you would find at the top of your standard Bic lighter was just popped into the bottom of your kid's new favorite doll. Now, while this obviously poses a huge risk with no fire safety warnings on the box, I could really only find one report of an actual accident involving these dolls. And luckily, Mattel did decide to recall because it sounds like it could have gotten really out of hand. A couple little girls were playing with their new Rollerblade Barbie and had sprayed enough hairspray in the area they were playing with her in to ignite a fire when they rolled her across the surface. The news around this accident got so popular that Dave Barry, a member of the Bureau of Consumer Alarm, which I didn't even know was a thing until researching this, decided to recreate the accident when backstage at The Late Show with David Letterman in 1995. After a few unsuccessful attempts off-screen, Dave was luckily, or unluckily, depending on your view of things, able to recreate the fire by spraying enough hairspray on a pair of underwear on stage during the show. While all remaining Rollerblade Barbies have been pulled off the shelf, you can still find ones at a relatively reasonable collector's price on eBay if you're extremely interested.
I may not be a master of this yet, but I'll still knock you into next Tuesday with my clacker volley!
I'm sure everyone has at least seen these toys before, called by many names, including clackers, clankers, click-clacks, bangers, and knockers. I think I'm gonna go with clackers. In addition to being strangely addictive and also highly annoying, these toys proved to be extremely dangerous and were recalled in the 70s after multiple reports of the weakened plastic banging against each other and exploding, spraying plastic shards and shrapnel all over innocent children. Weirdly enough, these toys had a resurgence in the late 90s and can still be bought today, but rest assured, the plastic kind is now made out of a high-quality polymer that has been deemed shatterproof. Well, I'm sure that we're all aware of the risk that a pile of unattended Lego can pose to your feet. These tiny little building blocks can also be a huge choking hazard. I guess I can't really blame kids for seeing those perfect little round minifigure heads with their bright yellow color and wondering exactly what they tasted like and popping one into their mouths. I guess a few too many kids had this same thought because soon after the minifigure introduction in the late 70s, the design of the minifigure head was changed from having a solid peg to a hollow peg featuring 3 small holes. LEGO has confirmed that these holes were added as a safety mechanism to allow for airflow just in case one of these minifigure heads was swallowed. But as hardcore LEGO collectors may have noticed, back in about 2012, minifigure heads began production again with the classic solid peg. We don't have any definitive answers from LEGO about why this change was made, but we do have this one-off quote from community manager Jan Beyer. Previously, the hole was made in the element due to product safety if the element was swallowed. These regulations change from time to time, and it has been evaluated and decided that the hole is no longer needed due to safety regulations. In my opinion, they most likely found through testing and accounts of children still choking on those damn little heads that these holes weren't super effective. I mean, you would have to swallow the head in such a way that it became perfectly lodged in your throat for the air holes to be sticking up. Before we get too deep into the morbid imagery there, let's get on to the next toy on the list.
Slap me! Slap me!
This one might come as a surprise to a lot of you. I know it was kind of surprising for me. Now, if you lived under a rock in the 90s, or if you weren't born yet, oh god. Slap bracelets were these amazingly stylish and slightly violent accessories that consisted of a flexible band of metal covered in fabric that would wrap around your wrist when you slapped it on. I definitely remember these getting banned in school, but I always just thought it was because teachers hated fun. Turns out the trend just posed a huge safety risk when companies in China started making knockoff versions with cheap metal that was prone to rust and cheap fabric that was prone to wear away, revealing the rusty metal underneath. This is especially concerning when you think about the fact that these things are being slapped right onto one of the most vulnerable parts of your body. There are multiple reports of kids being cut on these things that led to the recall of any knockoff versions of slap bracelets, and also the banning of these bracelets in most US schools by the year 2000. There have been multiple resurgences of the slap bracelet trend since then, including a Trolls branded version that came with a child's book released just last year, which led to about 5 kids being cut on their hands and fingers. I guess this is one 90s fashion trend we're just gonna have to not bring back.
Water, fire, air, and dirt. Fucking magnets, how do they work?
This might seem like a strange thing to classify as a toy, but I was pretty blown away by the amount of controversy surrounding magnetic toys in the late 90s and early 2000s. Some of the most notable include buckyballs, magnetics, and Polly Pockets. I always remember Polly Pockets as being these incredibly tiny little dolls that were obviously taken off the shelves for swallowing hazards, which eventually developed into these strange, like, mid-sized dolls with sticky silicone clothing that always got really gross in the summer. I don't personally recall the magnetic version, but apparently they were a big deal. Magnets are typically pretty harmless and can easily be passed through a healthy human digestive system if they're swallowed. The problem arises if more than one is swallowed at a time. If the partners happen to meet each other in the human GI tract, they can easily become fatal by cutting off the circulation of organ tissue or even causing holes in intestinal lining. A lot of these magnetic toys were recalled by the early 2000s after multiple reports of deaths and intestinal perforations. Ew. This next toy is so near and dear to my heart. It was the perfect marriage of strange dolls and plastic food that I seemed to love as a child. I remember being totally heartbroken when my mom told me about the recall and begging her to let me keep it. I'm not supposed to tell anybody, but she did let me keep it, so it might be floating around somewhere. Looking back on it now, I can't really explain why I was so obsessed with the snack time Cabbage Patch Kid, but I just loved the little mouth movements and shoving those tiny plastic french fries and carrot sticks right into her creepy, gaping orifice and finding it later, pooped directly into her plastic backpack. It was excellent. I loved it. Who wouldn't love that? But little did parents realize the series of mechanical rollers inside of these dolls' mouths had no automatic safety features and no off button. And obviously, since it was the mid-90s, there also wasn't any way for the doll to magically differentiate between the plastic food it came with and, say, a child's finger. A really morbid part of me was hoping to do some research on this and uncover some gruesome injuries, but luckily, no serious injuries were reported from this doll, just a lot of panicked phone calls and bad haircuts. Another toy that was so special from my childhood. I was not a big doll girl, so you would never see me play with a standard Barbie doll or American Girl doll. There always had to be something unique or different about my dolls in order for me to play with them. Like the original Polly Pockets because they were so small, or Pound Puppies because they were so small, and also puppies. Sky Dancers fit the bill perfectly for me. I remember taking those things outside and pulling the little string as far as my tiny hand could pull it and launching it up into the air like a magical fairy. Oh, it was wonderful. Apparently, they're pretty dangerous. Once they're done with their initial launch, their flight patterns are completely unpredictable. So they would come plummeting down from the sky at crazy angles and extreme speeds. I don't ever remember these dolls being even slightly as horrifying as they sound now, but I guess I can see how they're pretty dangerous. In fact, by the time they were recalled in 2000, less than 10 years after their initial release, there were 170 reports of the dolls striking children and adults on their path down from the clouds. 150 of these incidences resulted in injury. These included facial lacerations, broken teeth, temporary blindness, and even a broken rib. So despite my childhood fondness of these dolls, I can't say I'm too sad they were taken off the shelves. These things have actually been around for a while. They're great for helping kids with learning disabilities stay concentrated in class. I know when I got my first fidget spinner, I used to love using it at the office when I was trying to concentrate on long trainings or edit a bunch of code. And yes, I was a fully grown woman using a fidget spinner at my desk in an office. Everyone else had one. It was totally cool. It was fine. No one's really sure why these got so popular with the general public in the last couple years, but with most things, when it got really popular, it got really stupid. It's not difficult to find dozens of articles explaining why fidget spinners are the new dangerous toy of this era, but to be fair, most injuries are from people making extremely dangerous modifications to these fidget spinners, like attaching razor blades and knives to them, spinning them extremely fast, and stopping them with various limbs of their body. Believe it or not, when you take something really sharp that's moving really fast and put your skin on it, it's probably gonna hurt you pretty bad. But to be fair to the concerned moms out there, there are quite a few reports of injuries that are legitimate and not from idiots on YouTube. Cheaply made fidget spinners can have seams on the edge that are really sharp and can serve as razor blades without any of those crazy modifications, and there have been quite a few reports of kids cutting their face and hands on these things. There were also a couple more extreme injuries, like when a girl from New York chipped her tooth on a fidget spinner, and from when a young boy was trying to do a trick with his fidget spinner where he threw it up in the air and unfortunately did not catch it and it hit his eye, almost permanently blinding him. I was really surprised by one report of an exploding fidget spinner that I found until I looked into the details. A 4-year-old boy went to the hospital requiring stitches after a piece of his exploded fidget spinner hit him in the lip and cut him pretty extremely. This did happen, however, because his dad was using compressed air to blow the fidget spinner at an extremely high speed after seeing some videos of similar trends. I'm not going to fully blame the dad here. I don't think that I would have expected that to happen either. And of course, kids want to try what they see on the internet. So kids, just think before you spin. I remember wanting Aqua beads so bad when I was a kid. The couple times I got to play with them at friends' houses, I was blown away. It was such a unique form of arts and crafts that at the time seemed super futuristic. But what wasn't so cool about these tiny little beads was the oily coating that was activated by water after you created your art. There's a safe version of this plastic substance that was approved for manufacturing, but of course, some corners were cut and a cheaper alternative was found by some suppliers. A cheaper alternative that metabolized into what is commonly known as GHB. That's right, there were basically date rape drugs on a highly ingestible child's toy. It didn't take long before multiple reports of children becoming ill and losing consciousness were linked to the ingestion of these tiny plastic beads in 2007, resulting in a recall of both the American and Australian version of the product. Some obvious improvements were made to the manufacturing, and they were soon remarketed as Beatos in Australia and Pixos in the US. So you can still find yourself a GHB-free version of this toy in stores near you. I almost felt like I should skip this one because talking dolls just in and of themselves are incredibly creepy, so it's kind of low-hanging fruit. But I'm sure we've all heard the urban legends of innocent store-bought talking dolls being brought home and then relaying creepy, cryptic, and even satanic messages to children. But upon digging into this a little bit more, I found that most of the reports were either not true or just kind of seemed like parents projecting their inner fears or creepy inner thoughts onto the toys that they had bought for their kids. One example of this is the Little Mommy Real Loving Baby Cuddle and Coo doll. What the fuck? Who would buy that? That's like a ridiculous name for a doll, but also the concept of it is really creepy. I'm gonna default question the judgment of anyone who bought that in the first place. Consumers who purchased this really weird fucking cooing doll claim to hear it say, "Islam is light and Satan is king" during its creepy little baby sound. Honestly, I don't hear it, but here's a clip and you can judge for yourself.
There it is. Right. Okay, right in the very beginning it's going to say Satan is the king, I think.
Yep.
Sounds like a pretty normal but relatively unsettling doll to me. I don't know. What do you think? Another one of these reports I just really can't get down with is this electronic Elmo phone. Here's a clip and you let me know what you hear. Even ignoring the fact that this toy is a phone, so it's obviously saying numbers or a sequence of numbers, I just really don't hear anything inappropriate about this clip. There were at least 2 reported incidents of parents calling the manufacturer of this Elmo phone to let them know that the 456 button sounded like, "Who wants to have sex?" I think that these parents just kind of had a dirty mind. Now, during my research, I did find a couple of these stories that I am totally on board with, and both of them were mysteriously explained away by the manufacturer by saying that they were simply malfunctions in the toys. But I can't help but hear what these parents heard from these creepy talking toys. The first one is the Potty Time with Elmo book, and I'm gonna let you guys listen to the clip first and let me know what you hear. Now, if you heard what I heard, you're probably pretty creeped out from hearing Elmo say, "Who wants to die?" Apparently, the button is supposed to say, "Who wants to try to go potty?" which can probably be considered equally as creepy depending on the age group that you're reading this book to. The Elmo Knows Your Name doll is inherently creepy enough on its own. It uses basic computer learning to learn the child's name and insert its name into regular conversations with the doll. I guess this could be considered kind of cute unless you have the experience that this family had. Once the batteries started to go in this young boy's Elmo doll, his mother swore she could hear the doll saying, "Kill James."
About an hour later, I noticed exactly what it was saying, and my son was repeating exactly what it was saying.
Kill James?
Even upon replacing the batteries, she could not get the doll to stop. Now, again, I could just be projecting, but I definitely hear exactly what the mother heard in this situation. If you guys hear something different, let me know down in the comments below. Oddly enough, while researching these last couple toys, I found quite a lot of articles from religious organizations saying how Sesame Street is apparently satanic and is projecting satanic imagery and subliminal messages on children, but I'm thinking that might be a video topic for a later day. If you guys like this video, make sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe for more fun and creepy content. Make sure to check the links in this video description for my social media accounts and my online store if you're interested, and I will see you guys later. Bye!